Well, coming into the polytunnel this morning feels very different. Having rearranged it, got myself set up ready for a massive seed sowing session. And I've brought 3 houses with me this morning. These are the ones that I germinated in the house. So I'm going to keep those in here now, get them into this atmosphere as quickly as possible, although I'll leave the lid on these and hopefully they'll just carry on growing nicely. It did occur to me this morning when I walked in that my onions are looking huge. And if anybody's got any doubt about the benefits of potting your onions on, let me show you the originals that are still in the seed tray because I didn't use them all versus those that I potted on. Let's take a look. So this is the Globo onions. Now I think these are the Globo onions, to be fair. And there you can see certainly those ones on the edge not really disturbed from the original tray. And there you are. That's the difference. Absolutely massive, almost twice the size in a period of a couple of weeks. So just potting things on makes a world of difference. So before I start sowing today, I'm going to do some potting on. I'm going to do these cabbage. I'm going to do all the tomatoes, perhaps apart from these money makers, which I've got a third one come up today. And I'm going to do some of these lettuce, I think, as well. And this one's really not working out. Only one germinated, so I'll probably pot him on as well. And that'll give me all that space as well. So that'll be useful for moving on in terms of seed sowing. And well, jury's out on these. I might let these get a little bit bigger before I start thinking about potting those on. I've got a couple of little jobs I want to get done before I start sowing and potting. And I really need to focus in the polytunnel right now, but one of these can't wait and the other one I just want to do. Right, we need to take off these flower stalks from this rhubarb because it does not do the growing of the edible stalks any good at all if it's trying to flower. And there's quite a lot on here. I think it's these particular strains of rhubarb seem to have this problem for me. Anyway, and there's more over here. We'll take the rest of those off in a minute. And as you can see, this other strain, which is a lot later, doesn't seem to suffer from it at all. Just looking in there, no, not at all. So, don't know, it's about that species, probably my soil, and to some degree, I think it's probably the strain. Right, I'll get the rest of those off, and then I've got that other little job I want to get done before I start sowing. Well, those of you that watch my channel will know that I've been creating these raised beds from poles, and I had this little bit in the corner to do, and I thought about whether I would fix it down with a nail or a bolt, but in the end I decided just to oversize it and tap it in place, and that'll stay there. Great. Right, inside now. Right, in we go. I gotta say, this is the most enjoyable part of having an allotment for me, when the outside is under control and I can come in the polytunnel on a sunny day and just enjoy sowing and pottering. Good times. Right, get my onion out of the way and my seeds. And this is my next job. So what I'm going to do, I think, is get all my trays and all the things I'm going to sow into ready, fill them with compost, get them nicely laid out, and then I can enjoy the sowing all in one go, sort of in chunks. Right, I won't show you this in real time because putting these together is relatively straightforward, but as they're getting old, they are deteriorating a little. And whilst they are an excellent root training system, their life is probably, I would say, well, these are about 5 or 6 years old, and they're just becoming a little bit fragile, and some of them are splitting. So I'm still using them. I think they'll probably go on for a couple more years, but they don't compare to the container wise. Let me show you. I think that will last for years and years and years, and probably won't buy these again versus buying the container wise ones. And I think you can get a deeper one. If there was, I think I'd get a few, but I've got enough for now, so I'm going to use what I've got, and as things deteriorate, then maybe replace them with something of this nature. Well, I just did a sort of ballpark walk around my beds just to get a feel for whether the veg that I'm growing will fill the bed or whether I will have a lot left over, because I'm not doing a very well structured plan this year, just intuitive sort of planting. And well, it's about right. And if there's any flexibility, it'll be growing a few more of the sort of green winter crops, things like kale, and I might end up giving those more space this year than I did last. But it's there or thereabouts, so that's good news. So what I've got here is one tray completely for squash and pumpkins. I've got some small sugar, some uchikikuri, winter luxury, some little gems which were given to me, and some spaghetti squash which was given to me by a subscriber, so thanks very much for that. So we'll grow those, and predominantly I want the sugar pumpkin, but whatever grows well of the others sort of determines what else I do. So again, very flexible. I've got 32 stations for runner beans in my bean pole, and one of these trays is 32. So it seems perfect, but the reality of it, you always get a couple of duds and a couple of sort of stunted growth. So I'm going to grow 2 of those and be absolutely confident, because runner beans are really important to us. We love them. In this tray, I'm going to do courgettes. I've got 2 strains of courgettes, so I'm going to do probably 8 plants of each and just pick the best ones. I'll probably only end up with 4 or 5, maybe 6. But again, some of them don't work out. I'm going to do some salad leaf rocket because I love the flavour, and just a little bit of parsley. In this tray I'm doing some coriander, again for flavour, and some broccoli, some purple early sprouting broccoli. The 2 kales in here, Nero de Toscana, which is the Caballero Nero style, and a Russian kale called Red Ursa, which is easy picking and tasty. And then I'm going to do a whole tray of Brussels sprouts, because Brussels sprouts has been my nemesis for a few years, and this seed was recommended to me, brilliant F1, so I'm going to go for it. And I'm probably going to use 2 beds just in case one bed doesn't do well over the other, and that's going to be plenty. If anything, I've got a spare tray, so I don't need to fill up with compost on anything else. So I'm going to pull all these back and then start sifting into these so that I've got all my trays ready for sowing. Right, well that's got sowing trays sorted, And I'm just going to sort my potting on at the same time so that all the soil is in the appropriate containers. Now I think I've got 12 tomatoes, and these pots will come out of this tray. It's just for organising them and getting compost in there. But I will be putting these trays with tomatoes in, or these pots with tomatoes in, down onto the capillary matting, because the last thing you want is for tomatoes to dry out, because if they do, it will stop them for a while and hinder their progress. So definitely want to keep them moist. So that'll be for the tomatoes. And there is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Perfect. So 12 of those will go in there, and that'll be some of the potting on prepared. And then I need 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 for greyhound, and just 3 for fielderkraut, which is about perfect really. So I'll get some small pots for those, because I'll pot them on again before they eventually get planted out. So I'm going to use this organising tray, get these larger pots out. 8, 9, 10, I think 12 of these will be perfect. 3, 4, yeah, 12 goes in here. So the cabbage, well, there's no doubt about it. If you want strong cabbage, potting them on a couple of times really makes them a strong plant before you put them out. And that is helpful, particularly because cabbage do have a tendency just to lean over, which isn't ideal. There we go, that'll be for the cabbage. So cabbage, tomatoes, I think I'll be leaving the lettuce just a few days more, and I'll get some compost into these. Right, I think that's all my filling of trays and pots done. And now I'm going to give it a jolly good soaking, and then probably leave it for an hour or two while I go and have some lunch. But this just makes sure that the moisture gets down into these cells, and then there's no risk of a pocket of dryness at the bottom to cause any problems. While I'm here, I'll give everything else a good water. I'm finding that if I water every day, if I can, it's certainly having a very positive effect, rather than watering it a load and then leaving it a few days and then coming back. So every time I can get here to do a bit of watering, I'm doing so. Right, one more over the top of these, and then water the strawberries and back for lunch. Good times. I know you think I went to lunch, but actually, well, life got in the way and I never got back. So we're a couple of days further on, and I've got some essential allotment tools, a bag of toilet rolls and a bit of salvaged wood that someone was throwing out. I've got some plans for this and some plans for those. I'm not doing this today, but this bed is an amalgamation of, well, sides. So I'm going to use these two on the front and fix them through there. And I thought this bit of wood might just be the right length. It is for the back. And at least that'll be the start of some sort of retention at the back. And I'll have to work out as I go along a bit more for the side. So it's going to be, well, a bit of a botch, but it'll do the job and hopefully look reasonably neat. Not doing that today because it's pretty chilly out here, and I know my plot has not got an awful lot planted out. And well, I gotta say, with the weather being as cold as it is at the moment, down to a couple of degrees, I don't think anything planted out would have been growing particularly well anyway. So in a strange way, I'm glad I'm at the stage that I am, which I think is a bit behind, but things are coming along in the polytunnel. And today, all I've got to do is sow. So I'm going to sow. Well, all that hard work that I did earlier on to get all these trays and pots full of sifted compost, I'm grateful for that now, because today it's just going to be putting those seeds into that compost. So I'm going to make a little bit of space, shifty around, and then one by one I'll be planting all those seeds that I prepared for the purpose. And I'm going to get my parsnips into these toilet rolls. And this is a simple method. You've seen this probably before if you watch my channel. I just fill a tray full of toilet rolls and plant the parsnip seed into the top, and it adds protection to that root, because transplanting parsnips is not a great idea in that you can damage that root, and if you do damage that root, then what happens is the parsnip just starts to bifurcate or break into multiple branches. So the idea of this is that it keeps that single downward movement of one part of the root, and therefore you get the nice shaped parsnip. In theory, I invariably get lots of different shapes, but so these all just stack together. And then the key is that you're not actually taking the seedling out of its environment. You plant the whole of the toilet roll, and over time the toilet roll disintegrates, and there's been hundreds of toilet rolls gone into that bed, but you can't find one of them now because they just disappear, and that works really well. So I've got enough of those now, and that means that I'm going to have a super sowing session. That was step one. So all those tomatoes now potted up into the next size pot, and that really helps them move on, as I demonstrated with the onions. And out of that we've got 3 Roma, and the rest of the pots are Letar. And I have been growing some money maker, which have all germinated, so there may be a few of those that I use, but plenty of tomatoes, plenty of variety, and they're all looking very healthy now. So I used the compost out of the tomato cells where the plants didn't germinate. That compost is still perfectly fine, and the space that I made in the pots expelled some compost as well, and that's gone in to make up the parsnip sowing area. So I just simply put 1 parsnip in the tops of each of these toilet rolls. That should be enough for us. What have we got? 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 30 plus parsnips will be just fine. Okay, on to the next step. I think I'm going to pot on some of the lettuce and the various cabbages. Okay, that's the lettuce in. So they're just plants that I want to grow on as singles. I'll put those into the outside raised beds. I've got 2 boxes of mixed leaves down there as well, so that's plenty for us. I've always grown too many, so quite happy with that. That's probably 14 lettuce. So I've been reusing a lot of compost. So the compost that comes out of the various pots and trays as I go along, I just reuse it straight away. It's really not going to come to any harm. The fact that you're lightening it up and adding a bit of air and drainage always helps. So no great shakes that you're using some compost that's only recently been used. Okay, well, I'm nearly on with the potting on. The cabbage has gone in. I've got basically greyhound, I've got 9 of, and I've got 3 fielder kraut, and that's enough cabbage for us, so that's ideal. I did notice that the cucumbers have come up really well. I've always grown a few of those because they don't seem to germinate well, and I've got 5 out of 6, so there we are. That's the way it works. Okay, I think we're on to some sowing now. That's my run of beans in, and there's Czar. You all know what a fan I am of Czar as a bean, and I've got 1 odd row of black beans in there, so I only need a complete tray for the number of stations I've got to plant. So this is overkill, but as I'm sure you're aware, you do get some failure with saved seed and seed generally, so you just need to cover the bases. So that's more than enough for me. And then I've just put the parsnips into the toilet rolls, and with parsnips you need to plan to succeed. The germination rate of parsnip is always poor in my experience, and therefore in these toilet rolls I've put 3 seeds, and I'll cover those over, and if all 3 germinate I should just snip 2 of them and keep the strongest one. So my aim is to end with a growing plant in every one of these so that I don't fail. So that's parsnips and runner beans, and we're on to the next section. We're really getting on now. So 2 mixed trays. The beauty of these individual clamshell style root trainers is that you can sort of operate independently by strip. So I've got lots of squash in here, and at the end I've got some coriander, and if I need to pull those coriander out and plant them, then no big deal, they'll move out really easily. And so I've got spaghetti, little gem, oshiki curry, winter luxury, small sugar, 2 of, because they're the most important to me, 2 rows of coriander, 3 rows of coriander, a parsley, a rocket, and 8 individual zucchini or courgette plants. So that should be enough. So that's those in place, and that just leaves me a tray of Brussels sprouts to do. 2 halves of a tray of kale, red ursa, Russian, and kale de Nero de Toscana, the Cavolo Nero style, and 1 complete tray of broccoli, and that'll be it. Everything's sown apart from carrots, which will go in a week or so when I take all the plants out for bedding. So we're getting on really nicely. Just finish these off now. Well, that's it, all sown. It does seem like it's been a real measured, slow, leisurely sowing this year. I think it's because I didn't start so early. It's all been a little bit more sedate, and I've enjoyed it. So hopefully these will be successful sowings, and before long we'll have lots more healthy plants. As I said before, it's still cold out there, so I'm really not anxious that things are still growing, but it won't be long before we're planting out. So that's me pretty much done for today. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you did, then why not like and subscribe and hit the bell and get my notifications for uploads every Wednesday. and every Sunday. Hope your sowing went well. Diolch yn fawr.